Thanks for having me. So this is a story with a beginning, a long middle, and no end. So please bear that in mind when I give advice. It might all be wrong. But so far, so good. We're still alive. My name's David Rabie. As he said, I'm here from Chicago. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tovala. As you can see, there's a couple things on the screen up there. There's an oven and there's some food. And that's the basis of our business. We make a smart, connected oven. Think of it as a really high-end toaster oven that can also steam. And the idea with the oven is that it automates your cooking. So you put in a piece of salmon, take out your app, push the salmon button, and it cooks it perfectly. And it uses some steam, dry heat, and broiling in different combinations with different temperature to automate everything from a piece of salmon to a soft-boiled egg to mussels to sourdough bread. That's kind of part one of the business for all the foodies in the crowd. Part two of the business is a meal service. So we have a meal subscription service where we send you meals that are pre-prepped. All you do is add a couple garnishes, put it in the oven, you scan a QR code, the oven then downloads the recipe from the cloud and cooks it to perfection. Every meal takes between 15 to 20 minutes to cook. The prep time is under 30 seconds. And everything is software powered. So we have more software engineers on our team than anything else, and the device is cloud-based, and that allows us to update recipes on a regular basis. So my goal for today is to tell you a little bit about our story and splice a bunch of lessons in there about how we built a really complex business with not that much money and some mistakes we made along the way. So I moved to Chicago about 6 years ago. I went to business school with the intention of launching a food technology company. And the way I came up with this was I was cooking for myself on a Sunday, and I was using multiple appliances. So I was steaming my broccoli in one device, I was roasting sweet potatoes in another, I was boiling grains on a third, and I was sauteing tofu on a fourth. And I thought, man, this is so labor intensive. There should be one device that does all of these things and can manage different temperatures, different ways to cook products, make sure they all work in coordination, and I can just step away. And that was the aha moment I had. From there, I went on a discovery process, and I started to look at all of the different problems out there with meal preparation. Everything from thinking about what you want to eat for dinner that night, to actually shopping, to doing the prep, to doing the actual cooking, to the cleaning. And as I looked, I realized there's all these solutions for different parts of that, but there's not one that does all of those things. And through a bunch of customer interviews, industry research, talking to people, and really being very open about the concept, I slowly got to this idea of building something where we do everything from sourcing the ingredients all the way to cooking them. And so I like to say that there was an aha moment, but it was combined with a lot of research and a lot of customer interviews and a willingness to tell people my idea. And I told hundreds of people. There's novelty in the idea, sure, but the real moat is the complexity of the business. And I think ideas are a dime a dozen. It's really about execution. And had I not shared the idea with so many people, we wouldn't have gotten off the ground. Because once you tell people what you're working on, they're more inclined to help you and give advice and things of that nature. So we had this idea, we had a problem. My background is all in food and business. I don't know the first thing about building physical products. I don't know how to write code. I'm not a software engineer. I'm not even a cook. I make sweet potatoes. So what do I do now? Everybody said, well, that's a great idea, but this is not going to happen. It's a really complicated product that you want to build. Just build the oven or just make meals or just do software. But the novelty was in doing all of these things together. So couple things. One, I was very fortunate to be in business school. And I think business school is one place you can incubate an idea, similar to an accelerator or an incubator, but it was an area with a lot of resources, a lot of network, and a lot of people that I could help bounce ideas off of and start to build a team and gain momentum. The other thing that I did unknowingly that later I heard from the Airbnb founders was what really drove them. And for those that don't know the Airbnb story, it took them many, many years to get to where they are today. They started with nothing, and it took them years to get to the concept they had. And what they did was they took it one step at a time. So they had this bold vision eventually of where their business was going to be, maybe today, but they didn't think, how do I get there tomorrow? They just thought, what's the next hurdle, and the next hurdle, and the next hurdle? And we did the same thing with the business. So I was fortunate to enter and win a business plan competition. I raised a little bit of money. We built a prototype with a small outsourced team in China. All of that was enough to convince my co-founder to join. And once my co-founder joined, then we could get our first engineer. And with a small team of 3, we were able to build a real working prototype and use that to get into Y Combinator. And one domino came after the other. And over time, we built a business. But we really did it step by step by step without looking too far ahead. The other thing we did is we understood our value proposition very early on. And we weren't reinventing the oven. We weren't creating world's most beautiful oven. We weren't trying to put a touch screen in the oven. What we had to do was consistently cook delicious food. Nothing else mattered. So if you buy our product and you scan the QR code, the oven will work every single time. And every single time you'll get a delicious piece of salmon or a delicious beef stroganoff or whatever's on the menu this week. Nothing else was important. And so what that allowed us to do was realize, okay, we don't need to build hardware from the ground up. We need to go find someone that's already building ovens that work really well and just modify them. And we took that approach with a lot of what we did, from our hardware to our food operations to our software, but most importantly on the hardware. And that's the advice I try to give anyone thinking about building a physical product. It probably already exists in some capacity. Go find the version that exists, make it a little better, and keep, sell that until people will pay you and tell you they want something much prettier, much more custom, much more expensive. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did was we looked around. This was 2015 or so. Blue Apron was starting to get really big. Instacart was starting to get really popular. There are all these meal delivery services. There's lots of smart appliances. There was a lot we could learn and not have to reinvent the wheel. There were companies that had already figured out, how do you pack fresh ingredients in a box, ship it across the country, and make sure it arrives safe. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel on that. There's companies that figured out, how do you connect a device to the internet? All of these things where we could replicate what other people had done, and me as a founder with no technical background could open my network and encourage our engineers to talk to other people that had done similar things, allowed us to really build a complex business with not a lot of money. So this is something I fundamentally believe in, and it's, everybody says try to hire 10x people, and what does that really mean? How do you find someone that's a 10x engineer or designer or operations person? And one thing we did from the beginning was we really empowered our people. And we said, look, we have to build a mobile app. We have one designer, one developer. You guys figure it out. Here's the vision. Here's a massive project that if you have that kind of mentality to take it over, it's going to be very empowering. And for us, it worked. We launched this business with 12 people. And so that, 2 people on the culinary team, 1 web developer, 1 mobile developer, and it was, I believe, because we gave them so much responsibility, and these are people that are deeply ambitious, took great ownership over their work product, and really wanted to prove that they could build something on their own. So back to the value proposition, consistently delicious meals. We knew we were going to miss a whole bunch of things that our customers wanted, and the only way we would realize that is by putting our oven and our food in people's homes. And so we sprinted. And we rushed as quick as possible to get our product into homes, even though it meant making a whole bunch of mistakes. And when we put our oven in homes, yes, they cook consistently, but there was a lot of things that they did poorly or they didn't do well enough. For example, the oven's a little too big. And we heard that over and over again from existing customers and prospective customers. The oven doesn't have enough functionality on the front. These were things that maybe we could have learned with a lot of user testing, but more likely we wouldn't have learned until we shipped. And so we've taken a lot of those feedbacks and mistakes, and we've started to iterate both on the hardware and on the food service, and it's allowed us to move much, much faster. Instead of thinking about what is this perfect product, spend 3 years planning it out, designing it, and shipping it, and then learning all the things we didn't think about, because people are going to use your product in a whole bunch of different ways, especially when you're trying to change behavior. And so for us, that was critical. It was super valuable. Another thing that we deeply believed in as we're ramping up and trying to do this with a small amount of capital was to do everything ourselves. So, with a core team of 3, I was the one cooking the food. And so what that allowed us to do, and the food was okay, but what it allowed us to do was figure out what are we looking for in a chef? So, yes, I know how to roast sweet potatoes, but I don't know how to do that in combination with chicken. I don't know how to do 10,000 of those. I don't know how to change flavors on a regular basis. For every role that we hired for, doing it ourselves allowed us to write a super accurate job description, and it allowed us to know when was the right time to hire. Because until it was a burning pain on our team, we wouldn't hire. And so our team stayed really lean for a really long time. And it, again, back to the same point, but it allowed us to do a lot with a little. So a few mistakes that we've made over the course of this 2.5, 3-year journey. One is a bias that I have, and I think some people in the startup world also have this, is I have always been more inclined to hire people with less experience. thinking that they are more hungry, they're more likely to fit in with our culture, and I think that's a mistake. I think there's a balance. I think you want people that are green and really hungry and young and can be molded, but at the same time, you want people that have some experience, that have been through a few battles, that can help advise and offer guidance to problems that they have seen before, because yes, every company is a little different and every product is different, but a lot of the problems we face are very similar to any other company that's starting up. And so we get a lot of experience from our investors, and now we have some more experienced people, but if we had some more of those people in the earlier days, I think we would have avoided a lot of the pitfalls and mistakes that we made. The second, we made the mistake that every hardware company makes. We overpromised on our ship date. And tactically, I'll tell you why it happened. We launched a Kickstarter campaign in March of 2016, and we thought, okay, unless we ship in 2016, nobody's going to buy our product. So we have to ship by the end of the year. And that was driven by a belief that we need a successful Kickstarter campaign to raise money to go and do the thing. Now, in hindsight, maybe we lost the sales of a couple hundred, we would have lost the sales of a couple hundred ovens if we moved our ship date, but it would have relieved a lot of anxiety. It would have allowed us to build with a little more comfort. It would have kept us from disappointing our early backers. And obviously hindsight is 20/20, but this is a mistake that every company makes. And as we think about future product development, we're always going to way overshoot on when we say we're going to deliver because we've experienced this firsthand. And the last mistake I will say is that, I constantly forget this through every round of funding and everything we go through, but the goalposts will always move. So people will tell you they want you to achieve A, B, C, and the truth is they really want you to achieve A, B, C, D, E, F. And I think the takeaway for that is if you're in a position where you're raising money, raise more. Because you're trying to raise to a certain point, and the truth is you're going to need more money to get there, and you're probably going to have to go farther than you think. So as I thought about this presentation, and I'm really thinking about other people that are thinking about starting their own business, we've been working on this for 2.5 or 3 years, and it has been the most incredible journey. I think starting a business is the most rewarding, fulfilling, fun thing that you can do, and it's painful and stress-inducing, and there's late nights, but the bond that you feel with a group of people that are all in this together with a shared mission and a shared purpose is incredible. And I think that's often lost in society today. There's not a lot of things we do as a group where we have a shared purpose and we're fighting for it consistently every day. It's really a magical feeling. And as an idea goes from something in a PowerPoint slide to people working and consumers using your product and you seeing things come to reality, it's really been the most magical thing I think I've ever done. And I can't imagine doing anything different. So if anyone in the crowd is thinking about starting a company, I couldn't encourage you more to do it. And the one thing I can give back, I haven't made much money from our company, but I have gone through a lot, is advice. And so if anybody in the crowd out here is thinking about starting a company, I'm happy to spend some time and help you however I can. So with that, I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for offering to help people. That's incredibly generous. I guess question on specific things you've learned around supply chain, manufacturing. Did you guys start in the US, then move to China? Were you in China the whole time?
Yeah, so we started in China. We've been in China the whole time. We thought about going to the US, but it was too expensive, and we were looking specifically for oven manufacturers. There's not a ton in the US. What we did was we work with a very small team that has managed relationships between American companies and Chinese manufacturers for about 30 years. And so they will go out there with our hardware team. They help negotiate the contracts. They help put out RFPs. They're really valuable. They have people on the ground in China. Without them, there'd be no way to do this unless we had our own team out there.
See what that is? Is that,
is
that Dragon or is that
it's not
else?
Dragon. It is the same concept as Dragon, but it's a much smaller operation in Chicago where we're based. They're called the Product Greenhouse, and they've been great. They've been great for us.
Very good, great tip. All right, do we have questions?
Hi, thanks for your presentation.
Sure.
Okay, the cook in me is going to ask you the question because I don't get it really. What's going on here? Can I cook a salmon, vegetable together, and everything is going to be delicious because I'm assuming salmon and corn doesn't need the same time to cook? I did not understand really what was the difference. Do you have a scale in your oven to find out that, I'm going to cook that salmon 2 minutes because it's a quarter pound or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're making your own food, we have specifications in the recipe. So it'll say a salmon that's a 1/2 inch thick or 3/4 inch thick. And depending on the dish that you're making, we will pair it strategically with certain ingredients. So if you're making roast chicken, we'll pair it with carrots or we'll pair it with potatoes because they have similar requirements, right? That's for your own food. With our food, that's where it gets a little more interesting. We will par cook certain things. So we'll pair salmon with beets, even though beets might take an hour, and we'll par cook the beets in our kitchen for 35 minutes so that you can put it all in at once and it comes out together.
Over there. Actually, somebody who hasn't asked a question yet. Here.
Hi. What's your trade show strategy? Have you done the houseware show? Do you plan on finding retail partners to collaborate with?
Yeah, so we haven't done much with trade shows. We've spoken at trade shows, but in general have stayed away from hosting booths there. We'll go to trade shows and meet with people. Retail is definitely a part of our longer term strategy as we think about how do we get more distribution for the product. And the way we think about it is, what are the retailers that would carry both of our products? So who would carry an appliance and a food? And it's a short list. So probably in 2019, you'll see us in a retail location.
Hi, I'm a consultant, so I actually have had the fortunate opportunity to work in your city as well. So have you refined the thick crust pizza in Chicago versus the New York thin crust pizza?
It does. So the oven is amazing for reheating pizza, but not in terms of shipping pizza. Our meals are very, it's clean ingredients. It's within a certain caloric range, a lot of vegetables, so a little more healthy than deep dish.
That was a loaded question.
Thanks. I have a very simple question. If the internet goes out, can I still use it?
That's a great question. You can't if you haven't started yet. If you've already started cooking, it will keep cooking.
Check this one here. Two here. The lady.
Hi, fellow booth alum.
Hello.
Congrats.
Thank you.
My question is related to that channel strategy-wise. You went Kickstarter and there's direct shipments. What are the hurdles when you're talking about, except there's very limited selections in terms of who can carry your product? What are a couple of things that you learned along the way that you can share with hardware going to retail?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you have to go through a bunch of testing, which you're going to want to do anyway for a hardware product, but UL testing and FCC testing, you have to get through all of those. One interesting one for us is retailers want your product to not be that heavy. So our oven is actually pretty heavy and it's tough to take it off of a shelf. Yeah, I think those are the main ones. For us, the reason we haven't done it yet is our product is pretty complicated to explain. And once you get into retail, you're relying on a third party to sell your product for you and demo it. And so we're just not there yet in terms of brand awareness. What we're actually probably going to do this summer is our own retail store. So we'll have a retail pop-up with a physical presence where we have the ovens and a lot of food and people can demo and learn about it as a first step towards going into retail.
One last question here.
How many people can I feed with this oven? Assuming 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes max cooking.
So our meals as currently constructed are single or double serving. We're going to be coming out with family meals in the next 3 to 6 months. So you could comfortably fit 4. You could feed 4 once that comes out, and probably similarly with your own food. But you can't put in a giant turkey, for example.
All right, that was a quick one. I think this is a great workout. Thank you.
Great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
What's your data collection strategy? Aside from customer feedback, which is always important to pivot on very quickly, how much data are you collecting? How are you processing that data from a physical temperature usage perspective?
Yeah, so basically anything that you do with the oven, we're able to collect. So if you scan a QR code, if you push the salmon button on your app, and we're tracking temperature over the course of every cook cycle. So it allows us to do several things. We can diagnose problems really easily. We can look at all the ovens in the wild and make sure they're behaving consistently, and if they're not, try to figure out why. And then we can learn about customer usage and use that to inform meals that we're showing, what's surfacing. And then as we think about working with CPG companies, it starts to get really interesting because they don't have access to any of this data, and we can get them a lot smarter in terms of how people are using their products, how they feel about them, things like that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.